Okay, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to this careers panel for the Kitchener Scholars Association. I'm Fay Margo and I'm founding CEO of Brackendale Consulting, which is a marketing and communications agency specialising in finance, in particular private equity. I'm also a committee member on the Kitchener Scholar Association. I want to say a big thank you to everyone for being here, especially for the panelists who've given up their time to prep for this and to share their invaluable insights to everyone. We have a really good spectrum of different sectors and experience, both on the panel and I gather in the audience too, everyone at different stages of their careers. So hopefully everyone should have something interesting that they can take away with them. And there should be something of relevance to at least, everyone who's listening tonight. We're going to do our best to keep the panel as interactive as possible. I'm not going to ask the exact same question to every single person, apart from the first one, maybe the last. There will be opportunities for questions at the end. I'm going to be as strict as I can in terms of timekeeping because everyone's giving up their evening for this. So we'll try to keep to 45 minutes and then there will be time for Q&A afterwards. And yeah, hopefully everyone will leave the panel with some ideas for their careers, some inspiration, new network. Oh, hang on, someone's joined and I need to admit them. Grace, hang on. I hope that won't throw me too much when that happens. To kickstart the debate, rather than have me introduce our panelists, I'm going to ask each panelist to say in a few sentences what they studied, what it is they do now, and what they like about their profession. And I'm going to start with, in the order of how people appear on my screen, Sinjan, would you like to kick off, please?
Yes, good evening, and thank you for inviting me here. So my name's Sinjan Harold. In terms of what I studied, I did mathematical sciences at the London School of Economics between 1990 and 94. Yes, I can barely remember that far back. And where I am now today is I am the Group Information Security Manager for PM Group, which is a multinational organization responsible for architecture and engineering in the life sciences and data center space. So I look after both the internal group, 3,500 people, and all our big sort of blue chip clients. And you name them, you probably know them. And so that's what I do as basically head of cybersecurity.
And what is it you like about what you do? The last.
What do I like about what I do? Yes.
I hope you like it.
Because it's IT technology, it's very fast moving. It's you're always trying to keep, hopefully, one step ahead of the hacker, but can't always guarantee that. And because of the way we work, it adds such variety and constant different tools and different techniques and different ways of communicating and talking and getting on with doing the job. Everything is different and every day is a new challenge.
Perfect, thank you. Poppy, you remember the 3 questions?
Yeah, I can remember. Thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Poppy. So I studied history of art and English literature at the University of Birmingham. So I graduated in 2014. So I've got my 10-year anniversary this year, which is very exciting. So in terms of what I do now, I'm the head of communications at the National Portrait Gallery, which is an art gallery in Trafalgar Square in London. Often confused with the National Gallery. We share a wall, but that's kind of about it. So in terms of what I like about my profession, I mean, it's a very collegiate sector. We're all very chatty with each other. In terms of communications, it's press, marketing, digital comms, so that's the social media, the e-news, all of the kind of things that you might see before you visit the building itself. But I guess, the thing I really like is that I'm now working with many of the artists who I actually studied. So Ai Weiwei, for example, getting to take a group of journalists to visit his studio in Berlin and kind of see new work as it's being developed. Getting kind of Paul McCartney in to kind of play a bit of guitar while kind of installing his photography show. So you kind of really get to know all of these amazing artists that are having such an impact on kind of British culture and life. So yeah, that's my favourite bit.
It's pretty unique, special experience you've got there, Poppy. Thank you for sharing. Alistair, how about yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks also for inviting me. It's nice to attend as a panelist, having attended a number of these over the last 10 years or so as an attendee. So it's nice to sit on the other side now. So hopefully it's as valuable as I found it in the past. So what did I study? So I studied psychology. I also graduated in 2014. And then I also did a master's more recently in human resource management. What I do now is I'm the senior expert in HR insights and impact for Hugo Boss. So I'm based in their headquarters here in Stuttgart in Germany. And what I really enjoy about this job is it's all about people. I get to meet lots and lots of people and work with people all over the world and demonstrate through evidence and through data the impact that people make to our business. And I find that truly fascinating and very, very rewarding.
Thank you, people person. Thank you for sharing. Jonathan, how about yourself?
Hi, good evening, folks. I studied English language and literature at Oxford University and graduated in 2002, so a little while ago now. I'm now a community partnerships manager for Transport for London. So that involves public relations, public affairs, dealing with lots of elected officials, other stakeholders across London, and my team focuses particularly on South London. And yeah, so that includes the London boroughs in South London, of which there are 11, and that might be road, rail, DLR, cable car, a whole variety of things that Transport for London is involved with, and its current operations and the sort of big projects like Crossrail 2, Bakerloo Line Extension, those sorts of things. I like what some people have said about variety of work, about dealing with people. I'll say what's interesting about the transport sector is everyone has a view. People, if you say you work for Transport for London, they might want to tell you about their journey that morning. They might want to talk to you about Crossrail, the Elizabeth line, those sort of things. But everyone has a view, and so everyone comes to conversations with you with a whole load of things. And sometimes that can be good, and sometimes that can be a challenge.
You don't hear too much of the same view, I hope. That could be a bit.
It varies. I mean, it can be. I mean, a lot of people, especially if they're outside of London, they might know TfL for the Roundel, for the Tube, or the London Bus. If they're inside London, they might want to talk to you about ULEZ, which is something that came in last year. It all depends really where they are and what their experience of travelling in London is like.
Conversation starter anyway. Great, thank you. And last but definitely not least, Andy, can you please answer the 3 questions?
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I studied biochemical engineering from UCL. I graduated at about 2003 or 4, I think. But I realised fairly shortly after that I didn't want a career in engineering, so retrained as an accountant. So now work in finance. But particularly finance in industry, and I now work in the biotech sector. So I lead the finance company. I lead the finance function in biotech, and what I enjoy about finance, particularly in industry, is it's central to the entire business. So you can, I mean, it all comes down to the bottom line. So you're key to all of the decision making. And I have a golden ticket to go anywhere really and ask anyone what's going on, which is really enjoyable because I get to learn about the business and the guys, and particularly in a small company, everyone's so focused and energized by the mission that it's a really a rewarding place to be.
Lovely, thank you. So we've got a really nice broad breadth there of different careers and different experiences. And for my first question then, I'm going to look at how people started out and then compare that with where they are today, and in particular what it was that led them to where they are today. Because even just listening to those intros, you'll have noticed that there were a few people that studied something and then ended up doing something completely different. So it does show that it doesn't necessarily matter what degree you do or what you start out, nothing's irreversible and things can and do change. So I thought I'd start by asking maybe Alistair, who you studied psychology and then you changed your focus to do a master's in HR management. So what brought about that change, and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, it's I think this is something that's like very personal to me. My dream career was always to be an officer in the Royal Marines. And I did that for about 2 years. And then I had a serious back injury, and basically kind of relatively young in my career, that dream was over pretty quickly, and I had to go and decide what else I wanted to do next. So you couldn't have really forecast it. It wasn't really in my control, but these things happen. Okay, cool. So it was actually like it was actually a real opportunity for me to say, okay, that's fine. I tasted it. I can't do it anymore. What else are we going to do? So I kind of had a look around, and I thought to myself, right, maybe when I finished university, I didn't really want to go and work in an office. I wasn't really ready for that yet. But I had the opportunity 2 years later to ask myself the same set of questions. Do I want to go and maybe go and work in London or in a big city, go and join a big global organization? And I thought to myself, no, I'm still not quite ready for that yet. So I looked at where can I have the similar experiences that I can have maybe with the military. And I saw some connections with sport. I thought high performing teams in the military and that kind of group camaraderie. And so I ended up joining a professional sailing team called Alex Thompson Racing. And it was relatively small. It was based in Portsmouth. I got to work with a group of amazing people where the link between kind of what we were doing as individuals and how we worked as a team and performance in terms of how successful we were as a sailing team was really, really clear. And over those 3.5 years of working as the operations and the HR manager for the sailing team, I really that to me was where actually what I enjoy doing is working with people and understanding how to create environments where people can really perform for the benefit of organizations. And it was only kind of several years later that I kind of put the dots together and thought, well, that's a bit of psychology, which my original degree was in. It was a bit of this sports and high performing teams. And then I remember speaking to somebody and saying, well, have you ever thought about a career in human resource? Like, have you ever thought about, you know, taking this bit of your kind of operations title that says HR and actually really going and doing that full time and maybe studying a bit more? And I thought, well, do you know what? That's exactly what I enjoy. I love working with people. I love helping them and enabling them develop and grow, but for the benefit of the business, not just because it's a nice thing to do. So I kind of had a bit of the practical knowledge, and I wanted to put the theory with it as well in the academic side. And in HR, it's helpful if you have a professional certification. And one of the ways to get that was through a master's course. So being a little bit older at that stage, I decided to take a year out of work and fund the master's for a year in human resource management, get my CIPD qualification, and that really fast tracked my career. And I think if I kind of draw it on a graph, it kind of was going a bit like that. And then after that, it kind of went up. I then got to that point, and I decided, right, actually now I do want a proper kind of office career, like a sense of direction. So I joined EY in London in their people consulting practice and did that for a couple of years. And then had a complete change, and now I'm working with Hugo Boss. So I think my key message in answer to your question is it's okay when you leave university and when you're younger to not have like that end point in mind. If you do, that's great. Go for it. You're going to be successful. But if not, that's okay. And when bumps in the road come along, you're going to find opportunities and you're going to be successful.
Absolutely, you've so got the right attitude, and kudos to you for picking yourself up and just getting on with it. And you know, it's testimony to how far you've come and what you're doing now. Thank you for sharing. That's a really good story of a good career journey. I'm going to now turn to Jonathan. You studied English language, and now you work in transport. So tell us a bit about that. And obviously, when you were doing your degree, if anyone told you you'd be doing what you're doing today, would you have believed them? Talk to us a bit about how you've got to where you are now.
Sure. Yeah. So I studied English language and literature. So I guess I do work for transport, and have worked in major programs, but I suppose I still work in communications. So my roles have been very much stakeholder engagement, community relations. I've done sort of head of communications roles, the full mix. So I guess from that point of view, working in communications is perhaps not that surprising. Um, I probably, if you described what job I'm doing now to me 20 years ago, I wouldn't have really understood it, because I wouldn't have understood what that role was or what it entailed. And I think unless you're going into one of the professions, law or teaching, something like that, then you don't necessarily have a very clear idea of what roles are out there and are available, and roles that will be coming up and available to you in future years. But when I left university, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I probably became less sure of what I wanted to do while I was at university. So my first role was actually linked to some voluntary work that I did while I was at university, and that was managing a charity called Keen, in Oxford. So that was working with children and young adults with disabilities and pairing them with university volunteers, who would do sports and drama activities with them. From there, I then joined a social enterprise, which was a disability rights organisation, involved with broadening disability access to venues, and public buildings, especially around the country. And it was from that work that I was doing in consultation with disability groups, that then got me into consultation on major programmes. So then 2 years after leaving university, I got involved with a small project called Crossrail, which you will now know as the Elizabeth Line. It opened a few years ago, but I worked through the various stages of that programme in those communication roles for 12 years. And it was such a large programme that I had the opportunity to grow my career within that one project. And now, after a few years doing other things, I've rejoined TfL recently. I thought something Alistair said that was quite interesting was about joining the dots. And there's a very famous speech by Steve Jobs where he talks about connecting the dots rather. And he talks about some of the early things he did in his life, which he didn't know the significance at the time, but came back later on, and really helped him in the work he was doing at Apple. So I do recommend that as a motivational graduation speech if you've not seen it before.
That's really interesting, and actually it's telling as well, and it leads nicely into this is something, because I had my call with Andy just earlier today, and we were actually talking about something very similar when it came to Andy's career, because Andy, actually, you started out studying engineering, didn't you? And or biochemistry rather, and then you realised you fell into your job. You can tell everyone a bit more about it better than me, but you fell into your job and realised you didn't actually like engineering or want to do it. But then that experience did stand you in good stead. So I will let you tell the story better than I've just resumed.
Thank you. Yeah, no, but that's right. So at the time at university, I was really lucky at the end of my third year when I applied for and got a summer internship with a blue chip manufacturer. And so I spent my third year summer time working in Europe. And on the back of that, they offered me a job when I graduated. So I had my last year at university with a job in my back pocket. So it took all the pressure off. But what it meant was I didn't really do that hard thinking about what I wanted to do going forward. I had this job lined up to this. So I graduated, and took up this job. But after a year or so, realized it wasn't really what I wanted to do. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. And it was difficult to go back towards what I was studying at for my degree. So I decided to get a professional qualification, and it's a well-trodden path to getting an ACA accountancy qualification. So that's what I did, and it bought me a bit more time. Some of my university friends considered another 3 years being a student, and there's an element of truth to that. But that set me up really, really well for my career going forward, particularly because it's finance, and when you're starting out, you're not pigeonholed into a particular sector or into a particular industry. You can jump around sectors as opportunities arise, which I took advantage of. But I've been able to find my way back into a biotech, which is very strongly related to my degree, and so goes back to the themes of connecting all the dots up now. I still have that innate enthusiasm and passion for biochemistry, for biotech, and I can now work in that environment, and it fills me with awe what they do in the laboratory. And we are discovering, or we're trying to discover and develop drugs to cure diseases, and if we are successful and take those to market, that'll be amazing. So I feel very lucky having been able to get my career back into that area, albeit via a different profession. But looking back, I wish I'd done a bit more serious thinking when I was at university and taken the time to really think that through. But I do recognise it's a very hard question to answer. What do you want to do in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time?
Hindsight is the beautiful thing, isn't it? You can look back now and see the synergy and why and how it's worked out. But at the time, and sometimes you have to try out a role to know that it's not right for you, that specific role, and then to go down a different path. And it's serendipity sometimes where we end up, but it's so long as it feels like it's the right job. So thank you for sharing that, Andy. My next question is now going to look at, so I'm going to ask Poppy this next question. So we've looked at people who've studied something and gone through a winding career path that isn't necessarily what they set out to do, or they didn't necessarily know what they wanted to do at the beginning, that's true in my own personal case as well, actually. But Poppy, you studied English literature and history of art, and now you work in the National Gallery, not the National Portrait Gallery. I got that right, did I? Or was it the
National Portrait Gallery? Yeah.
You mentioned the National Gallery. Now I've got it.
Shot myself in the foot.
That's amazing. You've met Sir Paul McCartney. Tell us more about. I'd love to know what a day in the life of your job. It sounds like no day is the same, but it would be nice to get a flavour of the types of things you might do in your job.
Yeah, sure. So so as the head of department, there's lots of kind of liaising with teams across finance, HR. I manage a team of 9, so the kind of function of PR, so the press side of things, the journalists, the digital communications. So as I said earlier, that's the e-news and the kind of social media side, and then the marketing, so that kind of digital campaigns, posters, working with design. So kind of that's what the overall scope looks like. But I mean, so today, for example, a day in the office included meeting with an artist who we're going to be exhibiting in 2028. So kind of really nice, long forward planning. And Jonathan, I was thinking of you today because our Reba Sterling Prize judges came round to tour the gallery, and obviously the Elizabeth Line and National Portrait Gallery are up for the Sterling Prize this year, so that was quite fun. So yeah, kind of touring them around the gallery, and kind of introducing them to the themes of our redevelopment project. So the gallery shut in 2020 for 3 years, and we had this huge kind of overhaul project where the whole gallery became a building site. We had to decant works, bring them back in, and then finally open. And our patron is the Princess of Wales, so it involved kind of big royal visits, big red party galas to kind of open up the building. So that's the kind of glamorous side of it, I guess. A kind of classic day, I mean, my most classic day was in the morning. We had the Telegraph's chief art critic Alistair Soup come in to talk about a Tudor kind of Holbein work with a kind of 16th century curator. So kind of setting up those interviews, making those introductions, thinking about formulating pieces, and kind of positioning the gallery as this kind of amazing space of expertise, but also a really fun day out. And then later in the day, David Hockney, a very amazing kind of contemporary artist, again, another one who, you know, studied at university, came in to kind of stage his exhibition. So we were doing press photo calls in the gallery with him at that time. And then in the later afternoon, Raheem Sterling, we're working on a project with him at the moment called Making of Me, which is about encouraging young people in Brent to kind of get involved in creative careers. So he came in again, and we did kind of Nick Robinson Today programme, all kind of live from the gallery, with Raheem and kind of 20 young people who'd been kind of creating photography that was then displayed in the gallery. So I think what's so unique about this role, and I don't want to over glamorize it, obviously I'm aware that that's like a stupid amount of name dropping going on, but I think it's really crazy when you're at university and you're learning about all of these amazing people and these amazing artists who contributed so much. And then all of a sudden, those artists are so reliant on you to kind of form a message and kind of shape their own personal brands. And you get to have so much involvement in that. And I think, you know, we're so lucky here in the UK that, you know, if you go to the US or you go on a trip to Italy, you know, you're paying for every museum you walk into. Whereas here you can walk into kind of every national museum for free. The collections are all yours. So there's that really kind of amazing charitable messaging that we're always trying to get across as well. But, you know, there are these amazing portraits, these amazing works of art that are dotted all around the UK, and they're totally yours for the taking. It's very cool.
Sounds like an amazing job, never a dull moment. And also, I mean, the press, you can't have to try too hard to get them interested either. Like, as you know, I run a PR agency, and trying to get them to write about private equity on behalf of some of our clients can be a bit of a struggle. So yeah, it must be really nice to have to probably fend the journalists off rather than...
Yeah, you'd be surprised. It's tricky. I mean, the arts pages are ever shrinking, but I think, you know, kind of chiming back to some of what, you know, others have been saying about, you know, not quite understanding, you know, I studied history of art and I was always really into galleries. You know, if you looked at my A levels, kind of art, history, English, you'd kind of be going like, oh, I don't think this chick was kind of querying what path she was taking. But I kind of feel like when you're starting out, my feeling anyway was that if you wanted to work in an art gallery, you had to be a curator. And so, you know, you resigned yourself to the archive and off you went. But actually, it hadn't occurred to me at all that, you know, as a fairly chatty person, you know, art communications might be something that I could consider, or, you know, development, fundraising, finance. It's the learning team. You know, there's so many kind of areas of the gallery that you can get involved in that I just really wouldn't have considered until kind of starting to do a bit more research at university.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Sinjin, now you have another very interesting and also very different role. You got into, it would be interested also to know a day in the life of what you do, and maybe a bit of colour around how you got into IT security and some of the challenges, how you managed to stay one step ahead of the game, as you said earlier. So please share us what a day is in your life as well at work. It doesn't have to be today, it could be any day that's
absolutely. I'll start with, my job is not anywhere nearly as glamorous as what Poppy's done. I'm on the other end of the dull tech side of life, although I find it very glamorous and exciting. So in my role as the information security manager, basically I'm the CISO for our organization. We just don't use those terms. As a CISO, I'm responsible for the security of the organization, responsible for the digital security. I lead the physical security elsewhere. So that means that I have to make sure that the systems are ticking over, that the people are behaving correctly, and that our processes are in place to support the sort of the security controls we're trying to put in place. And so that is really very much educating people as much as it is educating or finding the right security tools to protect ourselves. And that ranges from doing on a daily basis. Some moments I'm up there at the board level providing strategy and guidance and advice on how we should be moving forward over the next 5 years, right down to the next moment I'm now dealing with a security incident and someone's received a spam email, they've entered their credentials and now their account is under attack. How do we deal with that? And so we're fluctuating right from real hands-on technical stuff from sort of risk-managed strategic guidance.
It sounds quite stressful. I mean, do you have to sort of stay quite calm under pressure? I guess within your role, if there is some major security breach and you're having to sort it out and get to the bottom of it.
So far, I've never had a major security breach. And I hope to keep it that way. But the only way you can do that is by understanding what you're dealing with and understand your risks. If you don't understand your risks, you're going to get caught out. And there's also educating the seniors, as I call them, because they can say some very naive things and think everything is okay with very simple technologies. And you're going, no, it's all about user behavior, making sure that our users, whether they're on our side in our company or our suppliers or the clients that we work for, it's making sure that everyone understands how to behave and how to work and how to operate, stay within the rules. And then I have to put technical controls in place to keep people inside those rules that we put in place. I suppose how I got here, or how do I understand how an attacker thinks and how they're trying to get into what we're doing, or into our organization, stealing our data, or even worse, getting into our organization to steal our clients' data. And that for us is the reputational biggest issue that we have to deal with. So the route I got there was I was in the Navy. I was a submariner, navigator to start with. Again, like a lot of us here, that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in the armed forces, but I actually wanted to do IT. But to transfer in the Navy into IT, you can't do it unless you join up as a warfare officer or some other equivalent and do a sideways move. However, in the military, it's gapped. And what gap means is that there's shortage. There's a man shortage. And so whenever you put your application into transfer, it's like, no, you're not moving. There's no gap. So eventually I resigned. And the moment I resigned, I said, oh, do you want that job? And I got the job as the IT security officer for the Navy. Now, that's when I knew absolutely nothing about what was going on and trying to protect systems. But then I was sort of supported by all the industries and all the defense forces, the defense companies and consultancies around. And so my hand was held and I was moved forward safely. But through that route, I ended up becoming a pen tester after I left the Navy. And the pen tester is you have to change the way you think. So now you're trying to break into systems. You're trying to attack and trying to compromise and get credentials, money, whatever it is that the end goal is for your what you're trying to do. And that's where you start to learn how technology really works. And I was given a bit of advice when I was probably 25, 26, and I was told for anyone to be successful in understanding technology at the in-depth level to be able to then secure it, it's going to take you 10 to 15 years. You will never be able to understand the underlying protocols that bring the entire digital technology, the infrastructure, the internet together. It's going to take that long, and that's hands-on. That's just you just got to work it, slog it out. And so that means becoming an engineer, a technical engineer, not a civil or any other type of engineer, but a IT engineer. Then you've got to build up on that and start to become an architect. And I use the architect in the sense of a digital architect, because I often annoy our architects in our organization when I say, oh, I'm a security architect. They go, no, you're not. You're a security engineer. You've not done the 5 years qualifications to become an architect. So that and I think under UK law, it's actually a specialized term. So you have to be very careful about using the architect term. So then that starts to lead you into building systems, building applications or technologies. I tend to focus on the infrastructure layer, but then there's a whole layer around software development and other areas where you try to bring it all together. But really the key thing around what we do with those different layers is it's all about supporting the business. If I'm not allowing the business to move forward to make money, I am not doing my job correctly.
Perfect, thank you. That's a really good overall description of what you do and how you got to where you are. And I believe you were involved in AI, weren't you, before it was even a thing? You were one of the
I probably 10 years ago now, I set up my own cybersecurity business in the AI space. So I was trying to use what would be now considered very simple machine learning technologies, supervised and unsupervised learning, to be able to detect malicious activity in web traffic. Managed, kept that company alive for 5 years, did a lot of MOD work in the process through that AI stuff. Got a couple of patents out of it. So yes, it was the
pioneering.
I was probably too early, and the funding didn't quite make its way down the stream. So after 5 years, it folded, and then went back into the safety of a big corporate where it had a pension.
Well, we've had to look now at people's career path on this panel, and how it's not always been, people haven't always started out doing exactly what they thought they would do. I thought my next question I'd focus on, would anyone have done anything differently? We've talked about joining the dots and how actually looking back, really, you wouldn't be where you were if you hadn't done all those things. Would anyone now have done anything differently? This is an open question for the panelists. I'm not going to target anyone in particular. Or you're all happy? You're all happy with the path that you've done?
I'm actually going to say, if I finish, I'm going to say I wouldn't change anything I've done in the past. It may not have been the most fastest route to where I am today. It may not have been the best well-paid route to where I've got today. But I wouldn't change what I've done, because all the experiences that I've had beforehand have led me to get to here.
And actually, setbacks do make you learn from your mistakes, don't you? And if everything is smooth and plain sailing, you never learn anything, do you? Whereas if you do have to struggle to get somewhere, it's because you really want to get there, or you've had to defy obstacles along the way.
It helps I knew what I wanted.
Alistair, you've unmuted yourself. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I will echo what St John said as well around life's about experiences. And all of these different things, it's very rarely that you ever find something as being a wrong decision or a right decision. And the people that are on this call now, you're all Kitchener scholars, so you're already starting from a very great place, and you're clearly ambitious and intelligent and motivated and all those amazing things as well. But the one thing I was saying is that the conversation I went for a job interview really within the last year, and we're talking about the conversation of skills. We're talking about this idea of like a T shape of skills, and on the top you have the high level skills and the behaviors which most people need in most roles. And it doesn't really matter what you do, but generally being able to communicate, being able to have some kind of emotional intelligence, being able to kind of manage yourself, let alone manage a project, but be reasonably organized, be motivated, be reasonably productive. All those kind of behaviors and traits that, generally speaking, they sit across the top. But then there's also the really specific skills that might be career related. So whatever they are, and so for me, maybe it's in human resources or in employee experience, could be in data security, could be in stakeholder engagement. But the ability to think in both ways and to think, how am I developing those behavioral skills that really about who I am as a person and what matters to me and what's important to me, and what roles can I find where my behaviors and the way that the values that I find are important. And then equally, how am I developing some of those more technical skills and saying that, because I'm, how over time am I investing in my own learning and development, my own professional qualifications, further education, what it might be, and balancing the two. It's not all but one, and it's not all the other, but it's about balancing the two.
That's really true. Poppy, you've got your hand up. I just want to make one point quickly, and then I'll come to you. Just to sort of agree with Alistair that skills can be very transferable. And so I was going to allude to a point that came up with Andy when I spoke with him earlier today about certain skills, such as finance, for example. Having a finance role within an organisation is quite a transferable skill in terms of you can then try out different sectors within that role, particularly if you're sort of at a more junior level. And there are others such, journalism as well. You can cover different beats and different topics. So you're not necessarily stuck in one industry. Did you want to elaborate on that, Andy? And then I'll move to Poppy to see what she wanted to say.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I was younger, starting out, I viewed it as being a good thing, being able to jump between different sectors, between different industries, on the basis that the opportunity set you could apply for job-wise is far wider. But I think as I look back now, I've come to appreciate specializing into a particular niche means you're a bit more of an expert. As Alice was saying, the deep tech knowledge down there. Yes, it reduces the available job market for you to apply to, but it'll put you at the top of any shortlist generated to go for that role, and it'll be a far easier sell, whether it's part of the recruiter, of the company, of the board, whatever it is. And so
once you've risen the ranks and become more senior, then you really make a niche for yourself within that particular sector, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I'm far more comfortable with that now than I was when I first started out. And I don't know what's right. When the best time or the right time to specialize and find that niche, when that is. But I think for me, it's the right way to go over time. And the trick is finding that right niche.
Yeah,
because that's not always straightforward.
I'm going to send to Poppy now, because I've got a couple more quick questions I want to ask. But Poppy, what did you have to share?
Oh, well, sorry. I was kind of going to build on that, actually, because I think, obviously my kind of narrative feels like I kind of knew that I always wanted to work in galleries the whole time. And I think, to a certain extent that's true, but I was still at the same time of graduating going like, oh God, what if it turns out I really hate galleries? If I get my first gallery job and actually I think it's all a bit of a disaster. So I quite intentionally chose to kind of pursue the marketing route, probably quite foolishly, thinking like, oh, I can just go to EDF Energy, or I can go to Barclays. I can pick a kind of, name your big commercial, and I can just go there, thinking that would be, a sensible route. I mean, kind of looking back on it now, I mean, I have done some of the more corporate roles. I used to work at UBS, which is a Swiss bank, but albeit within the art sponsorship team. So I kind of think, in terms of those transferable skills, communications is definitely one of them, one of those sectors. But I think as well, we're all talking about like, trying out variations. And I think that, those variations don't need to be, I studied chemistry and now I'm in an art gallery, or like, it doesn't need to be as dramatic as that, because I think actually I would say that I have tried a varying level of roles, although obviously it's been quite niche within those variations. So like, go to your big nationals, absolutely, but by working in a regional gallery, you get to work on a kind of plethora of projects. You're the kind of first point of call for press. You're designing the website, you're working on the, you're kind of doing everything. So
it's good to get a taster of different functions, isn't it, within one role as well. Actually, your question, your statement actually leads on quite nicely to my next question: is any advice you would have given your younger self as you were starting out? Which you've covered a bit there, Poppy, so that's great. Has anyone else got anything they'd like to share in terms of what they'd have told themselves when they were starting out? I think, Sinjin, you on our prep call, you said something about entrepreneurial experience or studying not being.
Yeah, it's when I was at uni, there was no real guidance around how to be an entrepreneur. It felt like a dirty word, and especially at LSE, everything then was all about getting into a bank. And once you're in the bank, then that's LSE sorted out, because then you're going back for masters and PhDs after that. Now I am overgeneralizing and simplifying the situation, but that's what it felt like to me at the time. And really, all I wanted to do was was at the back of my mind was set up my own business, something in tech, something really, glamorous. You watch the television in the 90s and the 2000s. It was all about these really cool ways of communicating, mobile phones and all that sort of stuff, and then how espionage and spies and all that sort of thing carried on around the place. And I really wanted to get involved in stuff like that, but do it with using my ideas and my thoughts. And I had no idea how to do that. So that's how I ended up just going. I'd go to sea and see the world. Except I went underwater and saw nothing. But that was just a minor sort of. That was exposure to a lot of really interesting things. But again, it's not around being entrepreneurial, and that's probably my biggest regret, is that I didn't take that step earlier. And when you actually do start thinking, oh, hang on, entrepreneurialism, there's a lot to be done in that space. There is a lot of help out there outside of university.
It's not something that's taught, is it, though? It's
not something you have to hunt it down yourself. It's not well explained, or at that time it certainly wasn't well explained. It's a lot easier now, I would suggest, but not hugely easier. Trying to raise capital is a whole different ballgame. But if I had known what I needed to know to set up my business, I perhaps would have started a lot earlier and been a lot clearer around understanding marketing, business, finance, and all those things. Not to the degrees or to the levels that everyone else here has done, but just enough to understand entrepreneurialism is about, fixing a problem, but doing it in a way that everyone else wants to pay you money in order to fix that problem.
Sometimes it's about taking a risk, though. Sometimes, I mean, as a business owner myself, sometimes it is about, there are different ways you can go about it. You can properly prepare and learn what to do. It depends what your character type is. I guess there are more risk averse people, and then there are people like me that just, okay, yeah, I set up a company in the matter of a few minutes. You could do it a lot more easily back in the day. It was 11 years ago. I did it online. Suddenly thought, oh my goodness, I have a limited company. What does that mean? And then sort of really learning on the job. I was a one-woman band for a few years, and then it's just exploring, trial and error, learning as you go along. It's a massive, exciting learning curve because everything's at stake. Whereas if you learn about the theory, for me, I would find that more dull. It's much more exciting doing it in the moment. And I've learned a lot along the years, and I'm still learning now. So I think it's a thrilling experience being an entrepreneur. But anyway, I'm conscious of the time, and I do want to just touch on one topic before we open up for questions. And it's something that was said during our panel call, and I think it's super interesting for everyone listening in on this, is about, Jonathan, you mentioned that you did some voluntary work after university, and we had a little chat on the panel before about the importance of doing extra work. If you're looking for a job, you might not have found your niche job, but you can try to do work off your own back, unpaid. It's great. Employers love to see people taking initiative and doing things for themselves. And Poppy, you spoke about, actually, if I can talk about this, can't I? You've got an exciting program, haven't you, at the National?
Yeah. So at the National Portrait yes, at the National Portrait Gallery, we have I don't know the age range actually of people on this call, but I was assuming maybe if you're at uni at the moment, you may be 21 and under, but I'm making an assumption. But we have a youth forum at the gallery, which is for people aged 18 to 21, and you can meet. You can be anywhere across the UK or internationally. You don't need to be in London to join. We've got a network of, I think it's about 300 young kind of people who basically all link up and kind of work on different sub-projects across the gallery. So you get kind of behind the scenes access, you get to kind of shadow and understand pathways into careers. And then as part of that group as well, we have a cohort of young producers. So these are kind of paid for bursaries for people aged between 18 and 21. And you basically kind of become part of the gallery team. And you kind of program, you get involved in curatorial decision making, working in the archives, so that you get that real hands-on experience of what it's like to work in a gallery. So our latest cohort of young producers have just been programming a the musical inspired Slate, which saw a kind of full performance by the queens of the musical, but also kind of House of Holbein rave for anyone who's seen the musical. You know what I'm referring to, but also kind of Tudor casino, temporary tattooing, kind of all inspired by Tudor miniatures and portraiture. So yeah,
I totally apply if I was under 21. I'm sure you've whet the appetite of most people on the panel by talking about how amazing your job is. So that's a really interesting actual opportunity that's out there. And then I'm being conscious of time, so just a few other ideas we threw around on our prep call earlier were being a school governor, joining the KSA committee. You'd all be very welcome. But there are lots of voluntary things people can do, and that will definitely enhance your career and give you some insight and experience into different careers. We have 10 minutes left, so I'm now going to throw the floor open to anyone to ask this fine panelist group any questions that they wish. Feel free to take your camera, to put your camera on and unmute yourself. Polly, we have a question from you. Just please unmute yourself.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
I've got a quick question for Andy, if that's okay.
Sure. Hi.
Well, quite similar to you, actually. I did biochemistry at uni, and I'm now training to be an accountant. And I'm due to qualify next year. I was just wondering if you've got any advice in terms of making that transition from working in practice to working in industry, and how to sort of navigate your career, I guess, after qualifying, because I'm quite uncertain, to be honest, as to what I really want to do after I've finished my ACA, and I'd just be really interested to see if you've got any advice on that.
Yeah, so so firstly, whilst you're in your training contract now, I guess, try and get as wide a variety of experiences as you can. And depending on where you are, in many different industries as you can, as well, to get an idea for what you like, for what really interests you. I guess, going forward in industry, you're right. The two routes are either FP&A, your budgeting, your planning, variance analysis to understand where the business is going, or your controller route, where you do the these are the numbers, these are the controls, and so people typically go one of those, either of those two routes, in an industry that they gained experience in whilst they were training. I did after I qualified. I did a really, really technical role. So I did technical accounting, which was really challenging, very difficult. But I learned so much there. That actually, when I look back, that I really cut my teeth in the technical accounting role for a FTSE 20, FTSE 30 firm. It was the gold, it was gold standard, and it really set me up, because it taught me what the best looks like, what you need to do to get there, and I've kept those lessons. It was really hard, but I've kept those lessons with me going forward. But I would say really just find the role in the industry that you are most excited about, or enjoy the most, because there are loads of them. But I think what but if you can, think it through beforehand. Because I guess partly your options, we've talked about how you can change, mid careers and all that kind of stuff, but that first move does put you one way. It does get the ship going in one particular direction. But I'll be very happy to talk a bit more specifics, to go through a few more things afterwards. One of the things I was going to say earlier, the advice I would have given myself when I graduated is talk to more people, talk to as many people as you can do, different views, different perspectives, and then make your own mind up.
That's very standard advice, and that's kind of you to offer to follow up as well, Polly. If you have any more questions, we can get you Andy's details.
Yeah, thank you. That would be fantastic.
No worries.
If anyone else has any questions, you probably noticed at the top of the screen there's a raise icon with a hand. So if anyone else had any questions for any of the panelists at all, feel free to raise your hand. If not, we are all contactable, I presume. I think Simon, you wanted to say, Simon's raised his hand, yes.
Yeah.
Make a few comments.
Yes, I will. And first of all, I'd like to thank all the panelists for their time this evening, for graciously giving up their time, and for you, Fay, for organising it. And I know you've had some, pre-prep calls before this session this evening. And I think the good news, although I think numbers are a bit disappointing and we did have a lot more who said they were going to join, the good news is we do have a KSA YouTube channel, which has only got one video on at the moment, but you will be the second video when we can get that uploaded.
Say that at the start.
Yeah, so because we have, when we ran the online the face-to-face panel last year, some people were saying, oh, well, can't it be online because we're studying in Newcastle or whatever. So anyway, you will be there on our YouTube channel. I think